for a lot of the game?
Well, they drew a pretty cool mountain and we made it in 3D and put it in the background. That sounds simple, but it took a long time to draw a mountain.
I was gonna say, the way you say it makes it seem like cool. Like a day later, we were done.
No, I mean this took
That's
probably over a year. I mean there was lots of different treatments for what the top looked like, and so when you're at the bottom, we had to make sure that that was represented if you're looking up at it. So if you are paying attention in the game and you're down in the lake looking up at the top of the mountain, it has the same peak structure that is up there in the top. We tried to be pretty, realistic about that kind of thing.
We waited a while too. Like we were drawing or building individual sections to try to nail the feel of those things, but it really wasn't until we had to do the cover art that we said, man, we better make sure we know exactly what the mountain looks like from a distance, because we knew all the pieces and we kind of had a very blurrier vision kind of view from E3 2016. But it is funny how you'd think we would start with the wide shot and then move our way in, but we kind of went in the opposite direction.
Yeah, Timo really did an awesome job of making that mountain for the E3 2016 in the skybox, I think. And then Mark Caston, on one of the concept artists, for a while we were trying to add more symbolism to the mountain, so he was trying to like anthropomorphize it, maybe like adding like more of a motif of like a bear or wolf or some kind of more mythological thing, and it started to feel maybe too much like a animated film, like a Brother Bear or something like that. And so yeah, it really wasn't the pack front that it was like, oh yeah, that's what we should make, and that's also what we're going to advertise the game with.
Of all the animated films you could pick, Brother Bear was your example. I like that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Fantastic. Deep cuts.
Yeah, so let's chat about Niflheim as well. Curious about challenges. I know this is very different from what's in the final game, so just curious how it all came to be.
Yeah, these were some really early concepts, and these kind of tapped into, I think, when we were first doing Midgard and even like the high-vis for the game, there was this idea of like these mazes that were made. And so I think, who made that fog maze?
I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first prototype idea, we had some new fog tech and some new particle tech and started to play around making a maze that was very foggy but allowed the silhouette of all the objects to really stand out. And that would play into the mystery, and then we started to layer on a lot of lore with it, and then that there were these plants within the maze, and they were poisonous, and they were the ones that are kind of emanating all the poison, and you can go around them and get protection from them and everything. So just all layered upon layered to build this unique world. I do really like a lot of the architecture stuff you guys had here that we never really did in the end, but
I mean, there still is sort of some aspects of it, I think, and that like greenish kind of mustardy feel. So
yeah, I like that core concept for me from a design perspective that really started to make it work was when we had talked about it essentially being a world that is filled with a curse. And when you enter into the curse, you start getting damaged and hurt. So when you go there early, you're not able to be protected against that. And it is kind of that feeling of like, all right, I got to kind of armor up and I got to get the right sort of equipment to be able to survive the curse for long enough to be able to go explore this world, which I think that's kind of a cool confluence of things. It's like those early, it's like Wind Waker, when you got to go get the lead boots to go in the cave with the wind, right? And I love that kind of marriage of the mechanics and the things that you get, sort of being able to combat nature, right? So the hero versus environment.
Can you chat a little bit about concept-wise, especially with the coloring? I think, how did the colors stand out, especially with all the realms?
The interpretations of Jotunheim in sort of popular entertainment right now kind of have the classic interpretations of the mountains and the blue and gray stone with the snow cap, very Lord of the Rings, right? But there is a reference in the Eddas that talks about the glittering golden fields of Jotunheim, right? And it's the only reference to that. Most of it still supports this concept of giants living inside of a mountain, which I still like the idea of the interior of the mountain stuff. But I was like, all right, well, I'm going to try to find as many of these sort of obscure references that still give us an anchor in the myth. And I really liked the idea of kind of leaning into that and saying, let's look at this in a slightly different way, right? Let's have a Jotunheim that feels like our own one, instead of saying, oh, well, Gandalf could be right around the corner, right? Going with Frodo up the mountain kind of thing. We don't really want that association. We need it to feel like our own. And there's this whole story about the giants and kind of them feeling almost like refugees in the myth. They retreat to Jotunheim and they kind of lock it out and prevent anybody from getting in because Thor and the hammer were super powerful and Odin was kind of a dick. So I think, those things sort of started everybody drawing on these things. But yeah, it went a long time, I think, trying to figure this out and try to make it work. And even in the playtests, we had people going like, this was it. Like when it was early and it was like really like the roughest geometry that we had gotten back. Really not a great looking thing and a really crude lighting pass. People finished the game, right? So it was playtest like last year, early 2017. And they're like, I finished the game and I get to the desert in New Mexico or something like that. And they're like, this sucks. They're very disappointed because it wasn't a lot there. But as everything started to come together, as the art went in, as all the lighting came in, all the effects and everything, people started to really understand that it wasn't that it actually felt like this fantastic, unique ending to their journey.
And I think some of the design, Luke, too, ties into the earlier giant piece where it's the stonemason and you guys did their masters of stonework. So this whole environment was kind of pulled from the carvings and the statues and all that stuff.
Yeah, so a lot of the, I think, larger architecture in Midgard was made by the giants, and then we tell the story of their exodus to Jotunheim in the mural, that's in this space.
Yeah, it does feel like you're, spoilers, you're walking through like a cool museum, like when you walk in there, you're sort of feel small. You see all these cool sculptures, you're walking by, you get to interact with things and hear stories about what's going on, which to me, I think is really interesting that it's like environmental storytelling, perhaps a little heavy handed on it, but like in a neat way, like in a way that I haven't seen too many games do.
Helheim looks colder than Midgard. Curious what artistic touches in-game artistically you guys added to this to make it seem.
I think it's worth noting that the Jotunheim was very yellow. Midgard is very bluish, grayish, Norse, typical Norse, and this is green. We did come up with a big color script, so like Luke and Cory and a couple of us, we review the game plays in this order, and here's the colors you'll hit. So we don't have 3 green levels in a row, or 2 red ones in a row. And so Helheim just naturally slotted into this green thing. It being cold, it just sort of like fit the bill that we'd go sort of greenish, really foggy, kind of cold. Even the final like lighting color correction we did is sort of washed out a little bit, so you get that almost cold desert feel to it. Yeah, but green is was sort of from the get-go, like the visual target for this.
It was neat too, because I think we had a bunch of different drawings and somebody just tried one tinted green. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. Because it's very hard to say you're going to the world of hell, basically, within the Norse realm. And obviously their hell is very different from sort of the Greek perception of hell, which then sort of gave way to the Christian perception of hell, as well as this fire and brimstone, right? When you're living up in that climate, hell is actually freezing, right, to death, right? So this idea of making a place that is unrelentingly cold, but also making it feel different from Midgard, which is also pretty damn cold.
Yeah.
And different from Hades in the previous games, which was like black rock and red lava.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And so like we came up with the idea to like have this sheared shape type look where you'd have a normal shape and look like someone just kind of cut through it and then offset it a little bit. So it's just not visually pleasing, just looks kind of nightmarish. That was kind of the goal.
Yeah. And then playing up, like, using some aspects of the mythology of, like, the river of knives that you're crossing over, or the bridge sort of walk into hell, and the idea of walking through mist for like 7 days to get to hell. And so kind of bringing all those aspects in. And then the gold.
Yeah, like in the myth, it's like the gold roof, but it's like anything we could do to connect with the myth, but also put our own sort of stamp on it so it felt unique. I thought that was great. Like it still maintained this feeling of being part of that world. It's nice that we have the picture of the eagle too, the infamous eagle. The eagle that was part of the early pitches was cut multiple times, brought back in, caused a lot of unrest amongst members of the team and the production staff.
Can you imagine if it wasn't there, though?
I cannot. No. I definitely think that the saga of the eagle is a story in and of itself. Honestly, it would make this fantastic sort of narrative journey when you understand how long and hard we fought for it and what it ended up being. Honestly, it's in there and it's like it's not a big boss or anything like that. even when we got it back in, there was the point where people in the playtest were going, "It's kind of a bummer that I didn't get to fight that awesome giant eagle." And we were like, "Oh man!"
Just wait.
After all the work to get it in, now we got to make it not so visible, so it doesn't feel like it dwarfs the guy that you're actually interacting with.
We're just always trying to find ways to combine those two things, characters and environments, and tell the story. I think the eagle is a big part of just even telling that wind blowing and kind of washing out the souls as they walk through the bridge. Like, that's a cool kind of combo with environment and characters that we try to do it everywhere.
Yeah, I think like that's a really good part of this game, which we've touched on in previous games, that I think we're really starting to understand a good methodology of working and how to integrate that is feeling like characters and the world are fused together so that sometimes the characters are not necessarily AI that you're going to interact with. They're a part of the world. They're the storytelling, the environment, the Witch of the Woods house, right? It's just this awesome confluence of all you guys getting together in a room and trying to come up with a clever idea. And then the one that was like, "That's insane, we can't do that." And it was like, well, that's the one we're going to do that.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, it's just great. Like, I think that is one of the best parts of working on these games.
How did the concept of the turtle come about, and the turtle home, and maybe the interior as well?
We knew in a conversation I was having, God, this was back when Chris Sutton was here. I had a conversation with him about like, we need to do something interesting. Like, it's cool to have the interior of her house. We got to do something that's unique, right? That makes it feel like, this is a unique house. And I think he said, okay. And he grabbed a bunch of people to go in a room and you guys brainstormed for a while. And when he came out, I think he was thinking about like, oh, okay, well, there's this crazy idea. Then there's a bunch of other ideas. And he's like, I feel pretty good about these ideas. And there was probably a list of like 5 of them. And he was sort of continuing to avoid the conversation of the crazy idea because I think he was even saying, I don't know how the fuck we would do it. And I don't think we have the time. And that was around the time when we were constantly talking about scope, which I think was from year 1 to year 4, that we just nonstop every day was scope. But then he mentioned, what if she lived inside a turtle, or at least underneath a turtle? What if there's this big creature, right? And I was like, I love this. He's like, damn it. Because he realized, I think, how hard it was going to be. And everybody, he said, everybody in the room resonated with that idea. Everybody loved that idea. I think everybody recognized it would be really hard to do. But I think that didn't seem to matter because the sort of end result, it's like Brock and Sindri's fucking gratitude, right? That was legitimately not part of anything. Fucking gratitude was not part of the story or anything they did. It was just somebody drew a beast of burden carrying some stuff for Sindri, I think, in one of the concepts for him. And then I was like, oh, we should totally do that. And we don't have time. And then it was just built. Like, it was one producer saying, we don't have time, we can't do this. And then it just got built, right?
That's the thing.
I remember getting an earful from a producer. What the fuck is this? They just built it when we didn't have time for this.
On some of these things, too, you can almost outthink yourself. Like, this is going to be too hard. It's just like, let's put pen to paper, so to say, and just start doing it. And
I think, honestly, to me, there's the impractical nature and there's the, yes, like, maybe it's too hard, but it's like, it's not practical to have her house below a turtle, right? But it's awesome, right? And it's interesting and it's extremely indicative of the character themselves. I don't know. I like Sanctuary Grove as a whole. Everything in this level is just so beautifully achieved, right?
Well, I think this did a great example of showing that all the mythology isn't evil and against you as well. Like, there's parts of it that are good. And
yeah, it's a nice thing to see, like the God of War game, which is, perhaps traditionally associated with Slayer, death metal, skulls, right? And just fire everywhere, right? To kind of throw a guy like that, like Kratos, with his history in this sort of very colorful world, right? And kind of be the very alien stranger in a strange land. This is like Alien Experience number 1. Alfheim is kind of like Alien Experience number 2. But this really is that kind of like, I was surprised at how comfortable it felt to have him in this environment. Because I really felt like it was going to be so out of place.
You have the kid as well to be that contrast, right?
Yeah, so he is kind of like that bridge.
I remember when like this was happening, we were so like the initial pitch for the game was really like, this is the road, but Viking, and there's no like none of the characters are gonna have any metal. Like it's gonna be super grounded. And for me, this was like the first moment when I think we started to fold that
new, like the art direction pillars in of like the fantastic. And so this felt like taking the kid to Disneyland. And I was like, wait, there's not supposed to be any joy in this world.
Right.
You know? And then finally, like, I think once we started to like massage those art direction pillars and get this in, it was like, oh, this is exactly what Cory wants. This is like, we need these pockets of like happiness and sort of beauty, and
The world's not
now I'm
always
really
trying
behind
to
it.
kill
But
you.
at first I was like, wait, what is happening?
And we did it in steps too. It felt
Yeah.
like we were doing this. We're like, a little bit more color, a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah.
more color. What if we tried this? What if we tried that? Like, it definitely was not like a single aha. It was like a period of time of everybody kind of saying, what if we tried this? What if we tried that? I think, I don't know. I think that is what sort of makes this moment kind of that standout. Is like, you look at playtest responses, this always seems to rank very high as people's kind of moments of amazing, right? But when the art wasn't in, when it was very crude art, when it was just the design, all we got was just hammered that Kratos is picking flowers. It was just like, really? Flowers? Kratos is picking flowers? This is ridiculous. How far he's fallen, right? Some dude was so pissed at us in the playtest. But then like 3 playtests later, when the lighting and the art finally came in, nobody is saying that, right? Nobody is berating the fact that he's picking flowers. They're more like, this was an amazing sort of revelation, right? And when it all kind of comes together, I don't know. Like, to me, this is the sort of fantastic collaborative end result, right? Where it is like, there is no one person responsible for this. This is literally every single person saying, what if you tried this? What if you tried that? It's even GameSpot is involved in this one, because the name of the freaking turtle is when they named the kid incorrectly.
Oh yeah, that's right. Charlie.
So, yeah.
But this did a great thing, I think, throughout the game, of the combination of the characters and the environment working together. I think we created a world that you're interested in. We've got this main story, but to me, I can go off the main story, and I think it would be just as interesting to explore this world, which is trying to create an experience as well as just kind of the game itself.
In terms of character